Hello and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I'm Jawad Tehami and these are the headlines. Pakistan is celebrating its 75th Independence Day with festivities being held nationwide with social distancing protocols. Addressing a flag-hoisting ceremony, President Arif Alvi said Pakistan is on the course of rapid development. While in a separate message, Prime Minister Imran Khan urged the nation to uphold values of unity, faith and discipline. Pakistan's Foreign Office says Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi is trying to distort history and stoke communalism. In a statement, it said the BJP government can go to any extent to sow further dissensions for electoral gains. This comes after Modi tweeted that India will observe August 14 as Partition Horrors Remembrance Day. In Afghanistan, the Taliban have seized control of the capital cities of Paktika and Kunar provinces. More than half of the 34 provincial capitals are under Taliban's control. Taliban fighters have now reached Char-e-Asyab district, just 7 miles south of the capital Kabul. Meanwhile, American forces have reportedly carried out airstrikes on the Taliban positions in Kandahar. Brazil has reported more than 900 daily deaths from COVID-19 and almost 34,000 infections. In Pakistan, 73 people have died while nearly 4,800 tested positive in the past 24 hours. Globally, the virus has claimed more than 4.3 million lives and infected over 206 million people. Those were the headlines and detailed stories right after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back, and now for the news in detail. Pakistan is celebrating its 75th Independence Day today with festivities being held nationwide with social distancing protocols. President Arif Alvi addressed the flag-hoisting ceremony in the capital, Islamabad.
He stressed the need to reject all sorts of negative propaganda, saying Pakistan is on the course of rapid development. Alvi pointed out that Pakistan successfully tackled the menace of terrorism. While in a separate message, Prime Minister Imran Khan urged the nation to uphold values of unity, faith and discipline. Khan added that Pakistan will continue to support Kashmiris in their right to self-determination. Earlier, a change of guard ceremony was held at the Mazar-e-Qaeda in Karachi. Special Guest Commandant of Pakistan Naval Academy Commodore Sohail Ahmed Azmi laid a wreath and offered prayer. Later today, President will announce Pakistan's civil awards on 126 people for showing excellence in their respective fields. In Indian capital of New Delhi, the High Commission for Pakistan held an elegant flag-hoisting ceremony.
In Indian-occupied Kashmir, residents are celebrating Pakistan's 75th Independence Day with enthusiasm, devotion and respect. Kashmiris raised Pakistani flags in Srinagar and other areas to express solidarity and love with Pakistan. They also chanted pro-Pakistani and anti-India slogans. Kashmiris will mark India's Independence Day tomorrow as Black Day. Pakistan's Foreign Office says India's BJP government is trying to distort history and stoke communalism. The remarks came after Prime Minister Narendra Modi announced that August 14 will be observed as Partition Horrors Remembrance Day in India. A spokesperson for the Foreign Office said it is shameful that Modi one-sidedly invoked the tragic events that occurred in the wake of independence. Zahid Hafiz Chaudhry said no modern state is as much in contradiction with itself as India. He said instead of healing old wounds, the BJP can go to any extent to sow further dissensions for electoral gains. He expressed hope that the people of India will completely reject the BJP government's publicity stunts. Pakistan has rejected India's accusations in connection with an encounter in occupied Kashmir's Kulgam area as baseless and misleading. In a statement, the Foreign Office said India is trying to undermine Kashmiri's indigenous struggle for freedom by blaming Pakistan. The Foreign Office told New Delhi to refrain from its reprehensible propaganda campaign against Islamabad. It went on to say that India can't succeed in diverting attention from its crimes in Kashmir through such falsehoods. In a separate statement, the Foreign Office also rejected India's denial of involvement in last month's deadly attack on Dasu Dam project. It said Islamabad has repeatedly presented irrefutable evidence of India's involvement in terrorist activities in Pakistan. In Pakistan, security forces have killed 3 terrorists after they fired at Frontier Corps vehicle in southwestern Balochistan. The military's media wing says soldier Naik Sharif embraced martyrdom in the attack in Loralai district. In a statement, the ISPR said 2 other injured FC personnel have been taken to a nearby hospital. It comes a day after the security forces killed 1 terrorist and apprehended another in South Waziristan district. In Afghanistan, the Taliban have seized control of the capital cities of Paktika and Kunnad provinces as they inch closer to the capital, Kabul. They are now in control of more than half of the country's 34 provincial capitals. Meanwhile, American forces have reportedly carried out airstrikes on Taliban positions in Kandahar. More in this report.
In the past week, the Taliban have swept across Afghanistan and seized nearly 20 provincial capitals. With the fall of Kandahar and Herat, the insurgents now have their sights set on the greatest prize of all, the capital. Taliban fighters have reached the Charasyab district, just 7 miles south of the capital, Kabul. Heavy fighting between the government troops and the Taliban fighters is underway in the key cities of Mazar-e-Sharif and Medan-Shar. The breakneck offensive comes just before the United States is set to withdraw its last troops after 20 years of undecided war. The US and British troops have started arriving in Kabul to help evacuate their embassies and citizens left stranded. Earlier in a televised address, President Ashraf Ghani said he will not let the war cause more deaths. Meanwhile, Qatar's foreign minister met the head of the Taliban political bureau to follow up on the peace talks. The foreign minister urged the Taliban to let up the escalation and agree to a ceasefire. The United Nations has raised alarm, saying that the situation is spinning out of control with devastating consequences for the civilians.
And to talk more about this, we are now joined by Lieutenant General retired Naeem Khalid Lodi. Thank you very much for your time, General Lodi. President Ashraf Ghani says the government is remobilizing the security and the defense forces. Do you think this would help to stop the Taliban's advances?
Not at all. I think Taliban have gained politically, diplomatically, militarily such large grounds that now any mobilization, any new mobilization, any new reiteration will not work. Actually, if according to my assessment, between peace and war, the only person standing in between is Ashraf Ghani. The moment he steps down, the moment he decides for the sake of the people of his country and for the sake of whatever he has achieved so far, I think he should get aside. And immediately, it is my assessment that the moment he is out, Afghan Taliban will announce a ceasefire, and they will go for all-inclusive government. But this man is his intransigence and his stubbornness is costing a lot as far as the Afghanistan is concerned and the people are concerned.
So, General Lodi, Pentagon spokesperson said Afghanistan's capital is not under imminent threat, and at the same time, the defense official said Kabul could fall to the Taliban in days. Why then are these contradicting statements coming from the same U.S. department?
Naturally, it is confusion. Otherwise, anybody can make a very, even if it is a conservative assessment, the Kabul is likely to be besieged, not fall. I will not say that Kabul will fall, Kabul is likely to be besieged within 1 or 2 weeks. And if it is besieged and all the logistics are cut, there will be no other option for whoever is in Kabul but to step down and to allow Taliban inside Kabul. And Taliban, probably for the sake of international commitment or for international recognition, may not attack Kabul. But definitely they will absorb all other areas, probably except the Panjshir Valley and Mazar-e-Sharif and Kabul, so that they can show to the world that they are not attacking the cities. They don't want casualties because so far they have swept the entire, the land of nearly entire land of Afghanistan through most of it through negotiation, very little with fighting. And the casualties which we are hearing a lot must have happened because of the carpet bombing which the Americans, carried out. And there are actually certain entities, those who want that civil war should erupt on a large scale so that this area becomes unstable. So we will have to wait and see how the things go. In my own assessment, very soon, Ashraf Ghani will have to go. Kabul will be besieged. Afghan Taliban will announce a ceasefire, and then the final negotiations will take place.
Okay, General Lodi, with the Taliban's offensive and rapid gains, do you think there is some sort of a future of the intra-Afghan talks?
Intra-Afghan talks, it all depends what do we understand by intra-Afghan talks. If it is meant that talks between Ashraf Ghani and Taliban, then of course it has no future. But if intra-Afghan talks taken in a larger sense, where all Afghan factions are taken on board, like Hazaras, like Turkmen, like Uzbeks, other factions, I think that those talks have a very bright future, and those must be happening also. We may not be aware of it, and those will also happen, and there will be a grand jirga, there will be an inclusive government. Of course, Ashraf Ghani will be out of it.
Lieutenant General retired Naeem Khalid Lodi, thank you very much for your time at Indus News. We really appreciate that. And now moving on, the US has imposed sanctions on an alleged oil smuggler and companies for supporting Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. In a statement, the Treasury Department said the Omani businessman facilitated shipments of Iranian oil. It said the designation targets a network of businesses based in Oman, Liberia, and Romania. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said the Quds Force used revenues from oil sales to fund malign activities. The action freezes any U.S. assets of those blacklisted and generally bars Americans from dealing with them. The measures come as talks to revive the nuclear deal between Iran and the world powers are stalled. More stories to follow right after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Brazil has reported more than 900 daily deaths from COVID-19 and almost 34,000 infections. Globally, the virus has claimed more than 4.3 million lives and infected over 206 million people. More in this report.
The resurgence of the COVID-19 outbreaks due to the Delta variant has dragged nations back into the sweeping restrictions. The U.S. Department of Homeland Security warned of a heightened domestic threat from extremists motivated by new COVID-19 curves. U.S. medical workers blame the resurge on the authorities' moves to politicize the pandemic as they suffer extreme burnout due to a rise in hospitalizations.
We're battling the misinformation and we're battling each other when we should be fighting together against the virus. The virus should be the problem. Now it seems that the willingness to get vaccinated segregates with how you vote, and that's something I just don't understand.
The Canadian government has announced to mandate all federal workers to get vaccinated amid a surge due to the Delta variant. This comes as the head of the Oxford Vaccine Group lambasted the wealthy countries over booster shots. He said many more people will die if Western political leaders prioritize booster jabs for their own populations instead of sharing doses. Meanwhile, the World Health Organization says it is setting up a new group to trace the virus origins. It said the move seeks to end what it called political point scoring that had hampered investigations.
we are proposing to member states to discuss with us and with the scientific community the next steps. And as we always say, all hypotheses are on the table. We need to understand it's difficult. It's a difficult process. It will take time, and the scientists need to have the space to be able to work in a quiet manner without political pressure or political debate. This is a scientific work.
In the United Kingdom, authorities said the estimated range for COVID-19 reproduction R number could be below 1, suggesting cases may no longer be growing exponentially. However, the situation remains grim in Southeast Asia. The Philippines' already stretched healthcare system is under more strain as the country reports the second largest daily increase in infections, while in Japan, COVID-19 cases keep rising, defying attempts to contain the spread of the Delta variant.
In Pakistan, the COVID-19 has claimed 73 more lives overnight. The health ministry says the death toll has risen to 24,339. The ministry registered nearly 4,800 infections in the past 24 hours. It said the positivity rate stood at 8%. Pakistan's caseload has exceeded 1,094,000, while over 983,000 people have recovered. The ministry says there are more than 86,000 active cases, out of which over 4,700 are critical. Pakistan's Chairman Joint Chiefs of Staff Committee, General Nadeem Raza, says the country is keen to expand its military-to-military cooperation with Kazakhstan. He said this in a meeting with Kazakh Prime Minister Aksar Momin during an official visit to the country. The military's media wing said the officials discussed measures to enhance the level and the scope of military engagements. It added that the leaders also discussed matters of mutual interest, bilateral cooperation and the Afghan peace process. The Kazakh Prime Minister acknowledged the sacrifices rendered by the Pakistan Armed Forces in the fight against terrorism. General Raza also met with the Kazakh Defense Minister and the Chief of General Staff of Kazakhstan's Armed Forces. Israeli security forces attacked hundreds of Muslims outside the Ibrahimi Mosque in the occupied West Bank city of Hebron. Palestinian media said soldiers fired tear gas and stun grenades at the worshippers, causing many to suffocate. It said hundreds of Palestinians gathered to protest against Israel's construction plans at the holy site. Palestinians see the construction as a way to take over the entire site for Jewish visitors, which is now split into separate areas for Jews and Muslims. Meanwhile, Israeli soldiers injured 39 Palestinians in the Beita town of Nablus city. The forces clamped down on a procession held against the illegal colonialist outpost and the ongoing takeover of the Palestinian lands. Israeli soldiers also attacked the weekly demonstration in Kufur Kadum village in Kalkilia city. Lebanon's central bank says it is ready to use the mandatory reserves to finance fuel imports if the necessary legislation is passed. In an interview, Riyad Salameh says central bank reserves stand at $14 billion. He said the formation of a new government with a reform program can also resolve the crisis in the country. But he said it is unacceptable to spend millions on fuel with oil, gasoline and electricity still absent from the market. Salameh also noted that all officials were aware of the decision to lift fuel subsidies. He made the remarks as the Lebanese government clashed with the central bank over its move to end fuel subsidies. Earlier, Lebanon's Prime Minister Hassan Diab rejected President Michel Aoun's call to convene the cabinet to discuss the crisis. Dwindling fuel supply has plunged Lebanon into extended blackouts and long queues for petrol and bread. In Zambia, opposition leader Hakainde Hichilema has taken an early lead in the presidential polls over longtime rival and incumbent Edgar Lungu. The president is running for a second five-year term. According to the preliminary results, 15 of the 156 constituencies gave Hichilema a significant lead over Lungu. In a statement, the Election Commission said the final results are expected on Monday. At least 16 candidates ran for president, with some of them conceding early defeat. The US has urged Tunisian President Kais Saied to swiftly restore democracy more than a month after he suspended the parliament. This comes as Saied received US Deputy National Security Advisor John Finner and top diplomat Joey Hood in Tunis. In a statement, White House said Finner delivered a message from President Joe Biden on a return to democracy. Finner discussed with President Saied the need to appoint a prime minister designate who would form a capable government. He also stressed the need to address the immediate economic and health crises faced by Tunisia. The official said the empowered government will be able to create space for an inclusive dialogue about proposed constitutional reforms. Finner also met with civil society leaders and conveyed US support for their active participation in building a democratic future. A 7.2 magnitude earthquake has struck western Haiti with fears of high casualties and widespread damage. The U.S. Geological Survey said the shock waves also traveled across the Caribbean. The depth of the quake was 10 kilometers, with its epicenter about 160 kilometers from central Port-au-Prince. The U.S. Tsunami Warning System said the threat of tsunami in the region has passed. The death toll from Turkey's floods has risen to 44 as emergency crews search for victims and survivors in the Black Sea region. In a tweet, the Turkish health minister said 36 people died in Kastamonu province, while 7 in the neighboring Sinop. Floods triggered by torrential rain caused some buildings to collapse, smashed bridges, and clogged streets with cars. Nearly 180 villages in 3 provinces are still without electricity. Earlier, President Recep Tayyip Erdogan visited one of the hardest hit cities and attended a funeral for some of the victims. Speaking in Bozkurt, Erdogan declared the affected provinces a disaster zone. A rented firefighting plane from Russia has crashed in a mountainous area in southern Turkey. According to the state media, the plane was linked to the rescue teams in Kahramanmaraş area. It added that the plane crashed as it was fighting a forest fire. State media said the cause of the crash is yet to be identified. Wildfires in Turkey's Mediterranean region began in late July and incinerated thousands of acres of forests, killing 8 people. At least 1 person has died, while 2 others are still missing after torrential rains touched off a landslide in western Japan. A wide swath of western Japan, particularly the southernmost main island of Kyushu, saw record levels of rainfall. Met Agency warned of landslides in wide areas stretching from western to the northeastern part of the country. Rivers broke their banks in several cities, including Kurume in Fukuoka, and were dangerously close to the tops in others. Shinkansen bullet train service has been halted along much of the line running from Tokyo to Kyushu, while heavy rains have also moved into the central part of the largest main island of Honshu. Authorities have increased the threat level to the highest 5 to cover more than 1.5 million people. In the U.S. state of California, Dixie wildfire has flared up, driven by winds along one of its flanks. The Plumas County Sheriff's Office issued new mandatory evacuations for all of Genesee Valley. The fire has scorched over 500,000 acres and remains only about 30% contained. The U.S. Forest Service said it is operating in crisis mode, fully deploying firefighters and maxing out its support system. To the northwest, the Monument Fire, one of at least 3 large blazes sparked by lightning last month, continues to grow. Officials warn that damage to fiber optic cables in the area is impacting emergency 911 notifications in a nearby county. U.S. government scientists have confirmed that July was the world's hottest month ever recorded. They say last month's global land and ocean surface temperature was 0.9 degrees Celsius hotter than 20th century average, beating the record of July 2016. The National Ocean and Atmospheric Administration report says Asia experienced its hottest July on record. Meanwhile, the land surface temperatures in the northern hemisphere measured 1.54 degrees Celsius above average. Earlier, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change found that the burning of fossil fuels has unequivocally heated up the planet. It said these high temperatures have not been seen on Earth in around 125,000 years. In Spain, the Perseid Meteor shower put on a spectacular show for the sky watchers in the Canary Islands. The spectacle of bright lights was seen from Pico de las Nieves, the highest mountain of Gran Canaria Island. According to scientists, the Perseid meteors are made from the debris left behind by the swift Tuttle comet. As the Earth passes close to the comet's path, the meteors become visible, just like shooting stars. The Perseid meteor shower reaches its peak in mid-August and is best seen from the northern hemisphere. It's time for a short break. We'll be back with more stories. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Scientists say an astonishingly well-preserved lion cub found in Russia's Siberian permafrost is 28,000 years old. The dead animal still had its fur, internal organs, and skeleton intact. More in this report.
The female cub named Sparta was found in Russia's Yakutia region in 2018. A second lion cub called Boris was found the year before. The cubs were discovered 15 meters apart, but are not only from different litters, but were also born thousands of years apart. The scientists say Boris, a male cub, lives around 43,448 years ago.
The find itself is unique. There was no other such find in Yakutia. Although another 3 lion cubs have been found for the last few years. One of them, Boris, was located close to Sparta, and others were found nearby more or less on the same river. Those cubs were 1 or 2 weeks old, very little ones. They were nicknamed Uyan and Dina after the river Uyandina.
The 2 cubs, aged around 1 to 2 months, were found by mammoth tusk collectors. Meanwhile, 2 other lion cubs named Yuan and Dina have also been discovered in the region in recent years. Cave lions have been extinct for thousands of years.
It complements the chain of discoveries, because if you talk about Uyan and Dina, their age was 1 or 2 weeks old. But Sparta and Boris were different ages, a month or 2, or probably less. Something like this. I think Boris is older because it has lighter wool comparing with Sparta.
Similar finds in Russia's vast Siberian region have happened with increasing regularity. Climate change is warming the Arctic at a faster pace than the rest of the world and has thawed the ground in some areas long locked in permafrost.
And now for weather updates, we have Raja Sarosh with us.
Thank you. We're going to have a look at the weather situation around the world, starting with Abu Dhabi, where weather is expected to be extremely hot with temperatures rising to 41 degrees centigrade. While in Amsterdam, temperatures are at 22 degrees centigrade with few clouds rolling in the sky. If we head to Ankara, there is a clear weather with temperatures at 28 degrees centigrade. Moving down under to Auckland, the temperature is chilly at 15 degrees centigrade with thin layer of clouds covering the sky. Now, if you're traveling to Bangkok, there will be an expected thunderstorm with temperatures around 31 degrees centigrade. In Beijing, temperatures are at 28 degrees centigrade with clouds completely veiling the sun. While in Beirut, you will experience sunny weather with temperatures at 33 degrees centigrade. Berliners will experience temperatures at 27 degrees centigrade under partly cloudy sky. Heading to Cairo, the hot sun will be out with temperatures at 38 degrees centigrade. And down under in Canberra, the temperatures are at 15 degrees centigrade with clear sunny weather. In Islamabad, the temperatures are at 32 degrees centigrade accompanied by afternoon thunderstorm. While in Jakarta, the temperatures are steady at 32 degrees centigrade, but you will also experience thunderstorms in the forecast. That's all for now. Back to you.
Thank you, Raja Sarosh, for the weather updates. And that is all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus.News.